At my brother's wedding, I was handed a paper badge that read, "Limited Access Guest." My mom whispered, "That means no plate." I looked over, walked to the gift table, retrieved my envelope with the $7,500 fund check, and said, "I think you won't need this anymore." Then I left. My brother ran after me, and my parents shouted, "Come back." But I didn't. It was offensive. No other word for it. My envelope was lying there on the gift table, plain white, a little bent at the corner from when I placed it down earlier, holding a $7,500 check I'd earned the hard way. It had taken me months of saving extra hours, skipping vacations, saying no to things I wanted, just so I could do something meaningful for my brother. And unfortunately for them, I was about to take it back. I had no idea anything was wrong until I arrived at the reception venue. The church ceremony had been fine, quick, pretty, the kind of thing that's all blur and applause. My brother had barely spoken to me that morning, but I chalked it up to nerves. I didn't expect red carpet treatment, I'm not that guy. But I assumed I was part of the family, after all. When I reached the reception check-in, I was behind a couple who were handed shiny, envelope-style badges, gold-trimmed, with their names and table numbers printed in calligraphy. Then it was my turn. The woman behind the table didn't even look up. She handed me a paper badge. I stared at it, white, flimsy, printed with thick black text that read, "Limited Access Guest." I paused. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Then my mom appeared like she'd been waiting nearby just for this moment. She leaned in and whispered, like we were sharing a joke, "That means no plate." I waited for her to smile, to wink, to make it a joke, but she just walked off before I could even ask anything. I stood there holding the badge, suddenly aware of how quiet everything got in my head, like I was underwater. I walked into the hall anyway, telling myself maybe there had been a mix-up. But as soon as I saw the tables, the seating chart, the servers placing dishes, it hit me. My name wasn't listed anywhere. I checked the family tables, nothing. Not even at the far end. No chair, no plate, not even a name card. I wasn't a guest, I was a placeholder, a loose end they didn't bother to cut. I stood near the wall, watching everyone settle in. My brother raised a toast. My parents clapped. His fiancée leaned in and kissed his cheek while people snapped photos. I waited for someone to notice me, for someone to walk over and say it was a misunderstanding. No one did. They saw me, they just didn't care. So, I made my way out of the main hall and back to the entrance where the gift table stood. It was crowded earlier, but now it was quiet, just a few scattered envelopes and gift bags. I spotted mine immediately, it was the only one that wasn't sealed with a sticker or ribbon, just folded closed. I picked it up, opened it, took out the check, and held it for a second. Then I said, not loudly, but clear enough, "I think you won't need this anymore." I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't make it 10 steps before I heard chairs scraping, someone calling out my name. Then my brother's voice, louder, angrier. And then my parents. They were all shouting now, "Come back. Come back." I didn't. I walked calmly to my car, started the engine, and drove off without a second glance. They could toast and dance all they wanted, but now the honeymoon they'd been so desperate to afford just got a little less golden. They didn't want me there. Fine. But they wouldn't get to use me either. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was angry, though I was, but because everything that happened kept running through my head in perfect detail, over and over, like it was burned into the inside of my eyelids. I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope sitting on the gift table. How proud I was when I dropped it off. I thought I was doing something good, something meaningful. I thought I was part of something. Instead, I was the guy with the paper badge. The guy who didn't get a seat. The guy whose own family decided he didn't quite belong. That wasn't some oversight. That wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate. By morning, the text started. First, my mom, then my dad, then my brother. "Can we talk? Please don't make this a thing. Let's not ruin the weekend." No one said they were sorry. No one admitted anything. It was all deflection and sugar, as if my reaction was the problem, not their treatment. My mom actually wrote, "We assumed you'd be okay with standing since you always say you don't care about fancy stuff." As if I was supposed to be grateful for the privilege of being excluded with a smile. Around noon, my dad called. I ignored it. He called again, then a text, "Come over. We want to talk. Your brother's here, too." I didn't answer right away. I took a shower, made breakfast, cleaned the kitchen. I didn't owe them urgency, and I didn't owe them the benefit of the doubt either. But still, part of me wanted to go, not to fix anything, but to watch them squirm a little. They needed that check. I knew that. I knew how close to the edge they were financially. I'd heard my brother complain about the venue cost and how stretched they were trying to book a honeymoon in the same month. So, I went, not out of forgiveness, but out of curiosity. When I pulled into the driveway, my brother's car was already there. So was my dad's. I walked in without knocking, and all three of them were in the living room. My mom tried to look casual, smiling like I was back from a long vacation. My dad nodded like this was going to be a reasonable conversation. My brother stood and half raised his hand like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to hug me or shake hands. I sat down and didn't say anything. I waited. My dad spoke first. He said it was really unfortunate how things went yesterday. Not that they made it unfortunate, just that it happened to be unfortunate. My mom followed with some lines about miscommunication and logistics. She used the word oversight a few times, as if I just slipped through the cracks, as if my absence at any table and my exclusion from dinner had been a spreadsheet error. My brother didn't say much. When he did, it was vague. I didn't know that's how it would be. I thought you'd understand. Like I was supposed to be some enlightened monk who would just float above the humiliation. I listened to it all, nodding occasionally. And when they'd finished doing damage control, I looked at them and said one thing: I might change my mind. That was it. No promises, just that word, might. The shift in the room was instant. My mom sat up straighter, eyes wide like I'd just thrown her a life preserver. My dad gave this sharp little exhale like relief was already washing over him. Even my brother glanced up for the first time and looked directly at me. I could feel their hope thick in the air, like they thought they'd won me back. My mom started talking fast about how generous that would be, how that money would go directly to the honeymoon, how she didn't want this little thing to hang over us forever. My dad chimed in about how families have rough moments, but they get through them. My brother didn't say, thank you. Not even then. I just smiled a little, stood up, and said I needed time to think. I walked out, leaving them with that word, might, buzzing in their ears like a secret promise. And I meant it exactly the way it sounded. Not a no, not a yes, just a long pause. Let them sit with that. Let them stew in it, because for the first time in a long time, they wanted something from me. And I was going to let them feel what it's like to hope someone else gives you what you desperately need and doesn't. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was soft, careful, like she was speaking to someone in the middle of a breakdown. She said she'd been thinking all night, that maybe things had been handled a little too rigidly at the wedding, that perhaps they could have communicated things better. She didn't say the words I was waiting for. No, we messed up. No, I'm sorry. Nothing like that. Just an attempt to paint the whole thing as a misunderstanding, something minor that maybe I'd blown out of proportion. Then came the kicker: they were delaying the honeymoon. Not canceling, just pushing it a little. She said it like it was a weather delay, like their plans had hit some mild turbulence that would sort itself out. What she didn't say was the part I already knew: without my check, they were screwed. Update. At my brother's wedding, I was handed a paper badge that read, "Limited access guest." My mom whispered, "That means no plate." I looked over, walked to the gift table, retrieved my envelope with the $7,500 fund check, and said, "I think you won't need this anymore." Then I left. My brother ran after me, and my parents shouted, "Come back." But I didn't. Later that afternoon, my dad called. He always plays it differently, less emotional, more calculated. He said he was proud of the man I've become, successful, stable, dependable. He said not everyone in the family could say the same, and that I should be proud of myself for having something to offer. Then he got to the point. "We trust your judgment," he said. "I know you'll make the right call." They were laying it on thick now, the fake compliments, the polished concern, the subtle reminder that I was the reliable one, the mature one, the one they needed. That was the moment I remembered the car. 6 months earlier, I'd loaned them my second vehicle when theirs broke down. It was supposed to be for a week or two. I never got it back. My dad kept saying they were waiting for a part, then they were waiting for a mechanic, then the mechanic didn't show up, and so on. I stopped asking. It became another thing I'd done for the family, but the car was still in my name, still on my insurance. I opened the account and checked. Yep, still registered to me. I scheduled a tow for Friday morning. No warning, no courtesy heads up. Just gave the company the address and waited for the confirmation. Friday at 9:12 a.m., my phone rang. My mom. I didn't answer. Then again, immediately, then a third time. Finally, I picked up. "There's someone outside. They're towing the car. Did you do this?" I said yes. Silence. "Why?" she asked. I told her I was changing insurance companies, which wasn't a lie. She said they needed the car, that they had plans, that it was inconvenient. I could hear my dad's voice in the background already yelling at someone outside. I said, "Then maybe you should borrow one, rent, or figure something out." "That's what I'd have to do, right?" She said, "This is about the wedding, isn't it?" I said, "No, this is about patterns." And I hung up. That evening, I got the first direct message from my brother since the wedding: "Can we talk?" Just us. 5 words, no punctuation. I stared at it for a while. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even surprise. He knew why I wasn't responding. He'd stood there and let it happen. He'd been part of it. I waited 6 hours before I answered. Soon. Not today. Not tonight. He could wait. Let them all wait. Let them live with the same silence they once gave me. Let them stay up wondering what I'll decide and when I'll decide it. For once, I was the one pulling the strings. I didn't respond to my brother again that week. I wanted to see how long it would take before he cracked. He didn't call. Just sent one more message the next day: "Please just talk to me." I didn't want it to go that way. I left it on read. Meanwhile, the silence from my parents was almost louder. No follow-ups, no apologies, no explanations, which told me two things. First, they were panicking. And second, they were trying to figure out how to save face if I decided to burn the whole bridge. I started to think that maybe they didn't believe I'd go through with it. That maybe they still saw me as the same guy who showed up to every family gathering, paid for dinner more often than not, stayed quiet when they took advantage, because that's just how family is. But I was done being predictable. 3 days after the car was towed, I dropped by unannounced. I parked across the street and walked in through the front door. My dad was in the living room watching the news. He flinched when he saw me. My mom walked out of the kitchen like she'd been rehearsing something. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "I know." I sat down at the table. They didn't offer coffee, which was a first. My dad muted the TV and leaned forward like he was gearing up for a pitch. He said they talked to Ryan, my brother, and that he was really upset about everything, that he never intended for me to feel excluded, that the wedding was stressful and chaotic and full of decisions that had to be made quickly. Then my mom added that they'd been looking at alternative honeymoon options. "Something smaller," she said. "More local." I asked if they'd booked anything yet. They said no. "Still figuring it out." I nodded. Then I said this: "I might be able to help, but I was thinking maybe I'd put it in the form of a loan. Nothing too formal, just something with terms." The room froze. "What kind of terms?" my dad asked. "Monthly repayments with interest," I said. "Nothing crazy, but it's a lot of money. I think it's fair." They both looked like I just spoke in another language. My mom said, "But it was a gift, wasn't it?" "It was going to be," I said. "Then you downgraded me to a limited access guest and cut me out of your wedding like I was some distant cousin you barely knew." My dad got quiet. My mom looked like she might start crying. And I added, "I'd like the family group chat shut down. I'm not reading another message from Anton about pool party plans unless I'm actually treated like part of this family." She started saying something, but I stood up. "Or," I said, "you can borrow the money elsewhere. Figure it out. If Ryan really needs it, maybe he can pick up a second job. Or you two can sell something." I walked out before they could say anything else. I didn't get halfway down the driveway before Ryan pulled in. He jumped out of the car like he'd been rushing home. "Wait, Tom. Wait." I stopped. He looked tired. Not fake tired, actually worn out. And in a weird way, it threw me. I hadn't seen him that way before. "I know they screwed up," he said. "I know I did, too. But you've made your point. Okay, just don't keep doing this." I didn't say anything. I asked Dad for help. "I didn't know they were going to treat you like that." I swear I found out afterward. I asked him if he had anything to say at the reception. When he saw me standing off to the side, when I walked out with the envelope. He didn't answer. "I meant the gift," I said. "Every dollar of it." He nodded. Then I got in my car and drove off. That night, I saw something I didn't expect, a message from Ryan's fiancée. "Hey, I don't know everything that happened, but I just want you to know I'm really sorry. I saw what they did, and you didn't deserve it." That stopped me for a minute. I read it twice, then I smiled. At least one person in that house had a working moral compass. After that message from Ryan's fiancée, I did something I hadn't done all week. I responded. "Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. I really do." She replied almost instantly. "I just wish you'd stayed. I think everything would have played out differently if you'd been there longer." I didn't agree, but I didn't argue. I wasn't going to dump my bitterness on the one person in that whole mess who seemed to have a conscience. Ryan didn't message me again after I walked away from the house. Neither did my parents. They were waiting, hoping. I could feel it. They thought I was still turning it over in my head, maybe softening, maybe getting nostalgic about family. Instead, I was sharpening the knife. That weekend, I texted my mom out of nowhere, "Are you still delaying the honeymoon?" She answered within 2 minutes, "Yes, haven't booked anything. We're just seeing how things play out." I followed up. "So, you're still waiting to see if I'll help?" Another pause this time. Then, "We're hoping yes, but it's your decision. We're not pressuring you, right?" Just the usual guilt-wrenching optimism. The kind that says you're hurting the family, but we won't say it out loud because we still want the money. I let a full day pass. Then, I sent another message. "I talked to a financial advisor. If I do anything, it'll have to be a formal contract with signatures, interest, and a clause that you can't talk to me about the money again unless it's in writing." No response for hours. Then my dad texted me directly, "Are you being serious right now?" I didn't reply. Later that night, my mom texted again, "Maybe we should all meet and discuss this calmly." I sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. Final update. At Sunday dinner, my sister rolled her eyes and said, "It's cute you still show up like you matter." My dad chuckled. My mom just kept eating. I took a bite and said nothing. 3 days later, I sold the vacation home and canceled all their streaming accounts. That night, my brother texted, "Why is everything disconnected?" The family group chat lit up, and then Dad's lawyer called. That weekend, I visited Jake, brought over some frozen meals and a few things for the kitchen. We sat on his ratty couch and watched him try to fix a wobbly chair someone had given him for free. He told me he was working extra hours and planning to start paying me back $150 a month instead of $100. I asked him why the change. He shrugged. Feels right. Then he said, they're freaking out more than ever now. Dad tried to hack into my email last week. I caught the login attempt. I nodded. Sounds about right. Then he said something I didn't expect. Lindsay said they want to go after you legally again, but not through the courts. I asked what he meant. She didn't say exactly, just that they were going to make you regret turning your back on blood. I didn't respond. Just sat there, letting the phrase echo. It wasn't a threat. Not really. But it also wasn't nothing. Jake saw my face and said, I don't think they know what to do without you. I told him that was the problem. They never knew what to do with me either. By the end of the night, I was back in my apartment, sitting on the couch, watching Jake's first rent payment hit my account on time. No drama. And in that moment, I realized something. The more they spun out, the more quiet I became. And the more power I had. They had nothing left to threaten me with. And they hadn't even figured that out yet. 3 months. That's how long it had been since I cut the last thread. In that time, not a single call from Mom. Not a voicemail from Dad. Lindsay hadn't tried to reach out either, though I found out through Jake that she tried using my info again to open a store credit card. That one was shut down before it even got reviewed. I reported it like last time and moved on. It wasn't even surprising anymore. Jake was still in that tiny apartment, still working 2 jobs, still sending payments every month, small ones, sometimes just $80, but always on time and always with a note that said, still trying. That meant more to me than anything I ever got from the rest of them. He called me one night after work, said he wanted to take a certification course for HVAC night classes. Said he'd looked up tuition, and it wasn't terrible, but he couldn't cover all of it right away. He didn't ask for help, just said it out loud, like he wanted to see how it felt. I told him what I always told him. If he kept up his payments, stayed consistent, I'd cover it as a loan. Every dollar tracked. Nothing free, he said. That's fair. And changed the subject. That night, I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Family Fallout. I hadn't touched it in weeks, but I wanted to see the numbers again. I went through every payment I'd stopped, every subscription I'd canceled, every loan I'd killed. I tallied what I'd saved, $11,052. Then I calculated what I'd spent on Jake, apartment deposit, rent, furniture, groceries, cell phone when his got cut, $3,135 total. That left me with $7,917 I would have never seen if I'd kept playing the role they cast me in. I hadn't spoken to my parents. They hadn't tried. Jake told me things at the house had gotten strange. Lindsay moved back in temporarily. Dad started locking his office door. Mom took down all the family photos that included me, like erasing me might reverse the damage. They told the story to whoever would listen that I'd stolen from them, turned my back on family, betrayed them for money, but they always left out the details. The years I paid for everything without asking for credit, the vacation home they signed over to me because they didn't want to deal with taxes, the fact that they laughed while my sister humiliated me at brunch. People noticed those omissions. I saw my Uncle Brad again at a gas station. He nodded at me like he was trying not to cause a scene and said, "Heard they're still mad. Heard you're still winning." I didn't say anything, just smiled and finished filling my tank. He said, "Most of us think you did the right thing. We just didn't know how to say it without blowing everything up." Then he added, "It's probably a relief to not be needed anymore." And it was. That was exactly it. I wasn't needed. Not anymore. I was free. And they were still stuck in a house full of each other. 3 months later, everything had changed. Not for them, but for me. They still lived together in that same worn-down house. Lindsay had moved back in full-time. She sold the Audi after missing 2 more payments and getting another repossession notice. She ended up with a 10-year-old Honda she paid for in cash, probably from whatever she had left or begged off someone else. Jake said she still walked around like she ran the place, barking orders, blaming other people for how unfair life had been to her lately. Dad rarely came upstairs anymore. He spent most of his days in the basement, glued to his recliner with a remote in one hand and a beer in the other. Jake stopped going down there entirely. Said it was like walking into a museum of disappointment, full of silence, low muttering, and resentment he didn't even try to hide anymore. Mom had started rearranging the house again, moving furniture around, relabeling things in the kitchen, organizing drawers no one used. That was always her move when things spiraled, pretend to be in control of the small stuff while the big stuff fell apart quietly in the background. They never reached out, not once. No apology, no message, not even an insult in the group chat. It was like they had finally accepted I wasn't coming back. Jake was the only one still tethered, and even that was loose. He visited once every few weeks, usually when Mom texted him about something important, which was always something like an old box of clothes or a random bill she couldn't figure out. He never stayed long. Jake was doing better than I expected. Still working both jobs, still paying me back every month, even upped it to $200 recently. He started bringing groceries to his apartment and cooking instead of eating out. He even sent me a photo of the HVAC course certificate catalog, circled the one he was aiming for. He was becoming his own person. Slowly, stubbornly, but definitely. And me? I was free. No more last-minute payments. No middle-of-the-night phone calls, no Sunday guilt, no pretending to care about people who never once cared if I was okay. My phone only rang when someone I chose to talk to needed me. My bank account stayed full. My apartment was quiet. My life was mine. I hadn't forgiven them. I hadn't forgotten what they did. But I no longer needed them to understand it. I didn't need closure. I had distance. I had proof. I had peace. Sometimes I still hear about them through someone else. My cousin mentioned mom told the church group I had abandoned the family. Another relative heard dad still rants about the house, how I stole it. Lindsay apparently is telling people I ruined her credit. But here's the truth. I stopped letting people drain me, and they called it betrayal. I set boundaries, and they called it cruelty. I stopped carrying everyone else's weight, and they accused me of dropping the family. They'll keep telling their version of the story. That's fine.